Election day was filled with allegations of vote buying and other election offenses, and these include faulty vote counting machines, brownouts, and malfunctioning SD cards. At this point, we would like to speak to Ona Caritos. She's Executive Director of the Election Watchdog Legal Network for Truthful Elections, or LENTE. Ona, good morning. Thank you so much for joining us on New Day. What is your take as we are a witness to the partial unofficial count so far?
Yesterday, the top three problems that we encountered and that we received from the general public is one, of course, the breakdown of machines. Second is missing names in the voters list, and third one is the lack of familiarity of some of the support staff, especially those who are manning the emergency accessible polling places in the different voting centers all over the country.
And yesterday, when I also voted myself, Ona, the voter's receipt, instead of putting it in a metal box, it was just like I had to slip it into a shoebox. Is that part of the whole process?
Yes, that is part of the whole process, and there's nothing stated in COMELEC's general instructions that a special receptacle or box would be used to contain the VVPAT or the resibo or the receipts or the voter verifiable paper audit trail. But for our listeners and our viewers this morning, that box or that receptacle or that shoebox would still be included and would still be placed inside the ballot box, and the ballot box is sealed with seals and paper seals and stickers as part of the security measures to ensure that nothing would compromise or no one would tamper with the ballots, or if ever someone would tamper with the ballot box, then there's proof that it was tampered with.
And of course, we saw that report from Tristan Nodalo about this incident in Quezon City, faulty vote counting machines, malfunctioning SD cards, a lot of delays. Apart from these issues that you also mentioned, have you received any other election-related complaints yesterday?
Yesterday, the top committed election offense that we received and that we saw from our observers was unlawful election meeting. A lot of people did not know that campaigning is no longer allowed on election day, but we're still receiving a lot of reports that individuals, even kids, most of the time, kids were used to distribute campaign paraphernalia and flyers to voters in voting centers all over the country.
And after Election Day, syempre, Ona, babantayan naman ng mga tao yung bilangan. Right now, we're seeing partial and unofficial results of the polls. At this point, what else could possibly happen?
I think people should also be worried, not naman worry, but people should be also know that there's also a measure that we call the random manual audit. The random manual audit is another confidence building measure on the machines that we use in the elections, and these are more than 700 polling places selected all over the country, and these ballot boxes would be subjected to a manual count done by our random manual audit teams, and this manual count will be compared to the machine count, and this will give us an accuracy count of how much the machines counted correctly our votes.
Our senior correspondent, Ruth Cabal, is currently at the PPCRV Command Center at the University of Santo Tomas. And we just spoke to her earlier, and she told us only one set of election returns have been turned in to the PPCRV. Is this normal, Ona?
Yes, that's the way that they do their unofficial count. Aside from relying on the electronic transmission of the results, they also collect the printed copy of the election results so that they would manually encode this election results so that they would not be fully reliant, or they would not rely fully on the electronics and transmission, because a lot of people, they are not that 100% confident on the transmission done by the machines or the VCM. So PPCRV, as another confidence building measure, it would use and would manually encode this printed election returns or ERs.
And for how much longer will the PPCRV be receiving these election returns? And with them manually encoding it, when are we going to eventually get a final result for President, Vice President, and all the other positions that are at stake?
From what I know of PP service operations, they would collect as many ERs as possible because their target is to get 100% of the printed ERs by all the VSEMs used in the election. So it would take a couple of weeks for them to finish or get all of the ERs that they want to get or that they want to encode in their system.
And with all these problems cropping up on election day, from faulty vote counting machines, malfunctioning SD cards, how would you basically rate, Ona, and assess the conduct of this year's election from a scale of 1 to 10?
Unfortunately, Rico, we don't have an assessment yet because we'll be releasing our final statement of the elections yesterday. So I can't answer your question right now, but hopefully by tomorrow we'll have an initial assessment of the conduct of the elections yesterday.
And we heard earlier, no, one of the COMELEC commissioners saying that these vote counting machines have already outlived themselves. Do you think it's time to replace these vote counting machines?
I think it's time to replace this VCMs because if you compare it and if you look at our history ever since we started using an automated election system, for example, the 10, the machines that we use in the 2010 elections, we use until 2013. And for the 2016 elections, we leased another batch of machines. And this batch of machines we've been using until the elections yesterday. And just like what Commissioner Casquejo said yesterday in their press conference, these machines have a shell life, and most of the problems that we encountered yesterday are due to how old these machines were. So I do agree with Commissioner Casquejo that it's time to reevaluate the machines that we are using in the elections, and hopefully in the next year or in the next 12 months, we'll have a more in-depth analysis and discussion of what machine or what system we will use in the 2025 elections. Remember, Rico, there was a move in the last few months or in the last session of Congress to go back to a hybrid election system, to go back to manual counting, electronic transmission, and electronic canvassing. So we're probably talking about another system that we'll be using in the 2025 elections, and not only new machines.
But do you think, Ona, that this is the right way to do the elections in 2025, go back to a hybrid system? And what kind of machine is best to use for our future elections? I mean, if you compare us to other countries in Asia and in the West.
I think given our experience for the past, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 major elections that we were able to use this system of OMR or optical mark sense reader, I think Filipinos would not have the patience and understanding to wait for days or to wait for weeks to know the results at the precinct level. We've been used to having results and knowing the results as early as the day of the election. So most probably, I think this is one of the consideration of our Congress and the Commission on Elections moving forward with the type of system that they will be using in our elections, because Filipinos are now accustomed and we're used to having results on the day of the election, and going back to a time where we have to wait for a few days or even weeks to know the results of elections. I don't think Filipinos would still accept that kind of setting or that kind of result in our elections.
We are indeed looking forward to your final assessment of the conduct of this year's polls. Thank you so much for joining us on New Day, LENTE Executive Director Ona Caritos.